All right. It looks as if most have found their way in from the waiting room. So why don't we go ahead and get started here. Good afternoon. Hi, everyone. My name is John Servos, and I'm the Director of Commercialization Education at Fast Forward Medical Innovation, also known as FFMI. And I want to welcome you to today's webinar. Before I introduce our speaker, I do have a few things that I would like to cover, including some technical housekeeping items. Please keep your microphone and your video muted throughout the webinar so we can cut down on any background noise and any distraction. If you would like to ask a question today, please type it into the chat feature. If you don't want to type your question, you can submit an X to indicate that you would like to unmute your microphone and ask the question directly. I, as well as several FFMI staff members, will be monitoring the chat function, and we will address questions periodically, and then, of course, during the end of the presentation as an open Q&A. Note that the presentation is being recorded, and we will share the recording and a PDF version of the slides with you post-program. Today's webinar is titled Forging Collaboration with Industry, Unique Models of Academic and Industry Partnerships. It's intended to provide a closer look at the establishment and considerations for various models of partnership with industry. It is provided by Fast Forward Medical Innovation, as I mentioned, which is a unit of the U of M Medical School Office of Research, where we help biomedical researchers accelerate innovations from idea to impact. There are 4 functions to FFMI. We provide education, such as this webinar, and additional courses to teach commercialization concepts. We have multiple funding opportunities that come with mentorship, a business development team to connect investigators with company partners, and we provide all of these services to a state and nationwide network as part of a hub. Today's webinar is the last of 7 that we have offered as a series over the course of the summer. Broadly, the goal of the series was to outline and describe critical concepts related to commercialization, analyze unique paths to market, and appraise diverse models of academic and industry collaboration. You can view all of the recordings on our website or our YouTube channel directly. The next FFMI Innovation Studio will be offered on September 15th. This is similar to office hours for innovators who are working on a project. However, we enhance the experience by having you register in advance with a description of your innovation and some preliminary questions. That information allows us to invite the appropriate experts from our network to give you the best advice. More information on the Innovation Studio and registration can be found on our website. All right, so with that, I am going to introduce our speaker. Today, we will hear from FFMI team member and Director of Business Development, Mike Ranella. As Director of Business Development, Mike fosters new partnerships between Michigan medicine and industry for the purpose of innovation and improving healthcare delivery. He has an extensive background in clinical research, especially in the cardiovascular space, where he worked as the aortic program manager for the Cardiovascular Center prior to joining FFMI. He has a bachelor's degree in human biology, as well as a master's in public health and an MBA. So thank you, Mike, for joining us this afternoon, and I will turn things over to you.
Thank you, John. Appreciate it. Just making sure everybody can hear me. Yep. Okay, good.
Yes, we can.
Just make sure I wasn't on mute. Okay. All right. So today, a couple of learning objectives that I just want to go over before we get started. So we're thinking about and trying to provide information around how to connect and prepare research investigators with working and interacting with companies and sponsoring research. We're going to cover items such as the modeling and opportunities that we would do with partnering academics with industry partners. And then some of the tips and considerations in which we want research investigators to be thinking about when it comes to working with industry. Things like confidentiality comes up a lot, capabilities, fit, timelines for deliverables, things like that. Those are all things that we'll try and cover a little bit today. I won't go into very deep models and things like that and details, but I will try and give you a high-level oversight. And hopefully from this presentation, we can have future conversations which we can get into details. This is meant to just give you high level. The attendees I took a quick look at as well too. I suspect that we've got a wide range of experience from those that are working a lot with industry and it's in their research portfolio to those that are aspiring and trying to get into it. So I'm going to try, at least in this situation, to get everybody by the end to have a common understanding around these objectives. So real quick, there are many research funding mechanisms that investigators can go after. The federal government with the NIH is one of the largest pie pieces that most of our academic research faculty are going to be familiar with, but there are also other ones too as well. I've listed them here, such as foundations, disease-specific funds like the one I've listed with Lymphoma Research Foundation. There's patient advocacy groups that can help support research activities for our investigators. We have a rich resource available here at Michigan to help investigators matchmake and find those opportunities. So for instance, we have a corporate relation foundation group, and I think maybe Greg Whitbeck is on this call. He provides RFPs for foundation calls for research grant applications, and would be an excellent person to go to around that. Today, we're going to focus in on industry, and in particular, the entire talk will be focusing in that space. Part of our team, as John had mentioned, we fit within the medical school's Office of Research and the program of Fast Forward Medical Innovations. The business development team focuses on building industry collaborations with our academic faculty within the life science space. What we're looking for is partners that we can work with both in the near term in terms of specific project-sponsored grants, as well as long-term relationships as well too. So for us as a team, we're looking for the right fit. We're looking for long-term, successful, win-win opportunities. And we recognize that Michigan is a very large organization that goes beyond just the medical school, but also to our partners in the different colleges across campus that are complementary to working with industry, and it makes it enticing to work with industry. So part of our goal and mission for our FFMIB team is to pull those teams together internally and have that also be a compelling reason for industry to work with the University of Michigan. We recognize too, with this large organization, lots of layers, we're trying to lower those barriers to first identify potential disease experts, let's say, that industry is looking for, as well as everything around contract routing and processing as well too. Real quickly, some of the resources that the Fast Forward BD team is providing is opportunities to connect with industry partners that we've established within our group, as well as with some of the other business leaders on campus too as well. We're looking for market trends, and we're doing our homework in terms of what the market forces are around the life science industry space to give counsel to our research faculty and staff around which companies they might be interested in working with them, or if it's a lot going on right now. COVID-19 seems to be a really big one, and ones that are cool, if you will. So we're giving tactical and strategy suggestions and outreach. We're also trying to pull together multidisciplinary teams. Again, that's a strength we believe of the university, is that there's multiple groups. For instance, Michigan Drug Discovery is both a med school, life science institute, as well as a college of pharmacy initiative. We want to be able to present that to companies that are looking for drug discovery programs within an academic center like the university. It's fairly unique and robust, so we want to be able to share that. Additionally, we want to make sure that we connect different parts of our organization in terms of either contract routing or intellectual property protections. That's our tech transfer office, our office in research and sponsored programs, with both our research faculty and making sure that we can get them through quickly in a time in terms of competitive timelines, because in industry, that's going to be one of those considerations. Also, there's always unique opportunities internally for funding for our research faculty that can make them industry ready too as well. So we want to be able to give information out, because this is a big organization and there's a lot of opportunities and funding streams internal to the university that's been provided. I'll go into some details in just a second. First, I want to introduce the team, the FFMIB team. There's 4 of us, including myself. We have a very diverse and experienced group, Najwa El-Bakati, as well as Amelia Metrakeska, Deborah Grega, and myself. Between the 4 of us, we cover the entire medical school and Michigan medicine research team and ecosystem. And what we do is we divide up certain disease expertise, and we have domains of expertise that we go deep into. So for instance, with Najwa, she will be covering a lot of the MEND and diabetes activity and research going on across Michigan medicine and med school. Deborah with emergency medicine and GI, Amelia with cancer, and myself with sleep, cardiovascular, and clinical trials. But that said, as a team, we also work with industry as well. So we have our internal customers, what we call them, which is the University of Michigan faculty and research team, but also on the industry side too as well. And I'll give the example that industry in general, the companies, most of the large ones are very large and layered, similar to the university actually. They don't necessarily know all the different business deals that are going on between the diabetes group and the cancer group, let's say. So for our team, with the Rolodex of contacts that we have, the example I'll give is that Najwa has a strong working relationship with companies like Regeneron in the diabetes space and knows that group very well. In addition to that, same thing within Regeneron, Amelia has strong working relationships with their oncology units as well too. So depending on where we need to go within a company, we can go right to hopefully the source in which is related to the disease that we're talking about. I want to say that Michigan is rich with resources. We are not the only team on campus that is engaging with industry and external entities that want to work with the University of Michigan. So in addition to FFMIBD, within the Med School Office of Research, we do have the Clinical Trial Support Office, the CTSO, that we work closely with when it comes to clinical trial partnerships. So for instance, there are models that we've been putting in place working with the CTSO and FFMIBD in companies such as AstraZeneca, where we have opportunities to build out relationships that allow us, for instance, to have first right of refusal and new clinical trials that are rolling out in North America where Michigan has first right of refusal. And we distribute those clinical trial protocols across the CTSU to the clinical trial investigators in that space. We have multiple projects going and research relationships going between large pharma companies, med device companies, and the University of Michigan. So that I could get into details more on that later because we're going to cover many different aspects of this. I'm going to keep going. On main campus through the University of Michigan's Office of Research, UMOR, we have another group called the Business Engagement Center. I believe maybe there's a few on the talk, maybe Chris Fick is on there. I'd say stand up and wave, but we're virtual, so you can wave. But the BEC is a group that's focused on working with industry as well across the entire Michigan campus. And so they're covering not necessarily just med, they're covering the entire campus of engineering, computational med, chemistry, and we work closely with that group too as well. An example I'll give is that sometimes companies that may not traditionally be in the or in the life science space, like Procter & Gamble or Google, for instance, may have an arm of their R&D now that's focused in the health space. So working with the BEC members, you may hear from them or they may engage us to talk to some of the med faculty as well to get a discussion going with a Procter & Gamble or the Google Health side of the industry partner that we've connected with through the BEC. Another group is the Tech Transfer Group. Again, they're part of the main campus Office of Research. They have multiple services similar to what FFMI gives. Really, a lot of the interactions that people might be familiar with is and surrounds intellectual property and terms and conditions in that space. However, they also provide and have opportunities for funding that is in association with partnerships at Michigan industry level, let's say, that I want to just bring some attention to. So for instance, I've got down here below the Novartis Institute for Biomedical Research, NEBAR Scholar Fund. And what that is this is a partnership between the University of Michigan and Novartis. And NEBAR is the drug discovery unit within Novartis located in Boston that's partnered with our tech transfer office at the University of Michigan to put out a sponsored RFP, if you will, for drug discovery and drug activity and research that could be funded, as well as provided resources to from the NEBAR teams. That opportunity is unique too in that there's intellectual property that could potentially be generated from this, as well as funding. There could be insight gained from the Novartis team in which they could potentially give future research dollars to your to the work that you're doing. There could be a license opportunity as well at the end. We have several of these going forward as well too. Deerfield Fund and with Spark Fund as well too. And I believe Deerfield is the RFP is going to open up in September. we can share more after this presentation on that. But just to give you an insight, there's multiple resources here across campus, and we're working together to help build the relationship between industry and academic researchers here on campus. So let's level set for a second. You're going to hear the idea and impact many times over. I'm a visual person, so I like to give pictures and things like that too as well. And really what I want to do is just kind of give the holistic approach right here in terms of the timeline, in terms of where we sit in academics versus industry, what the translational pieces look like. And what you can see here is that, you know, neatly it goes from the ideas on the basic research side of things through proofs of concepts and translation to the clinical research, and then ultimately out into the market, if you will. To the far left, really on the idea side and proof of concept is where academia sits. This is where ideas are being generated, the innovative approaches that can go after it. And then right below that, you're seeing the industry partners with the overlap, if you will. It's really when they get interested is when proof of concepts are starting to be identified and elucidated, that industry partners are jumping on board and investing, sponsoring, supporting, taking it and moving it forward. And as you can see, academics really stops after the phase ones or right up to phase ones. At that point, it's really exiting the university and we're moving forward. Multiple prior web education seminars have talked about this portion of it, and just wanted to put that in perspective for everybody. Education and mentorship is across the board too as well from this continuum, but ideas to impact, that's kind of the theme throughout this now that I want you to start thinking about. All right, so real quick, so everybody's kind of on the same page. Through our own review and assessment of the market, one of the things that we're seeing is trends in the industry around research and development, where the in-house model, a company that has a gigantic unit in basic science labs and scientists, that's being removed, if you will, and they're outsourcing this work to other entities in which they're going to hire through sponsorship, or if they see new companies with technologies that they'd like to acquire to boost their portfolio, that's the strategy going forward. Less and less is in-house development. There are pressures in place, like the fact that there's complexity around creating and having therapeutic targets available, and therefore they're looking for academic researchers or others outside of their own house, if you will, to bring in to boost those their R&D goals. What I want to share then with you is the med school grant awards. This is only for med school, not for the entire Michigan campus. And I give the longitudinal look at this, and I think this kind of backs up last slide in terms of the outsourcing of some of the work that's getting done by industry. 2008 was an important year because this was the year that the medical school propped up business development activities. And from there, you can see that in 2008, when we had about just under 40 million in industry dollars, we are the last fiscal year, 2019, I know 2020 was the last year, but that's incomplete data. That's from January. The last complete year was 2019, and that was over 120 million, close to 130 million in industry dollars. And we've seen a dramatic upswing in the last 3-4 years too as well, from 2015, 16, and 17. What I want to share too is that line that you see, that trend line, is the percent of dollars coming in, that's industry. As you could see back in 2008, less than 10% of all the pie for awarded dollars for med school was going to be, it was industry dollars. Now we're almost at 18% of that pie. So a bigger chunk of pie is industry funding now at this point for the med school. Now I want to be clear, I'm not claiming that the business development activities is what's driving this. What I would tell you is I think it's a holistic approach. I think it's a culture and a mindset that's been building. And that reflects both our faculty, our staff, our approach in terms of programs, as well as the activities of BC and tech transfer and our FFMIB teams. Just to dissect this a little bit further in the last recent few years here, 3-4 years, you can see what this slide is really just telling us is that we're doing more contract awards with industry, and those awards are bigger. That's essentially what it is. So we're getting more deals done, and the deals that we're getting done have larger dollar figures associated with it. That can infer a couple of things like, complexity or longer term deals that are being made. But overall, those are good numbers to be seeing, at least in terms of trends. But what does it all mean? What's really driving some of these dramatic turns up in terms of industry-sponsored activities? And what I want to share with you is some of the drivers on the types and the category types of industry awards. Small, I know, I apologize, but what you'll see in the top line, that's really the high influx there, that's clinical trials. So industry-sponsored clinical trial awards. These are the ones that I think I would tell you are the biggest drivers in terms of the dollars coming in. But also increasing over time that we're seeing, and with increased growth, is sponsored research activities too as well. So the difference between clinical trials is it's going to involve human subjects. It's going to involve some sort of interaction or behavior intervention. That's a clinical trial. Sponsored research is going to be, typically your classic bench work, or it's going to have some sort of translational component within there too as well. The next that I'll skip down to is the consulting and other sponsored agreements, OSA. That's also been increasing too as well. Those actually are, although not large dollars, in many ways can be indicative of long-term success. And we'll get into that in just a second too as well. Okay, so as I said, I promised, I told you I'm a visual person. You're going to see things like ideas to impact throughout this talk. So what I want people to take away from this visual is the fact that ideas that are being created by our academic research scientists and then supported by industry, the impact in this situation is going to be what's in it for industry, right? Is this going to impact the market? Are they going to create a competitive advantage? What does that mean? And we call this pathway commercialization here at the university. We have resources like commercialization education, our funding and mentorship that our FFMI program has services available for investigators. You can use this same model to say ideas and impact for NIH funding, where the ideas and grants come in and you get a journal publication in a high impact journal like the New England, right? It could be used in the same way. But in this situation, kind of going forward, what I want you to think about is the impact on the industry side of things. And as you can see near the bottom there, industry partnerships, when they see that this is a value add to them, they're going to be providing sponsored research opportunities along the way too as well. Okay, so let's talk about how we get started. How do we get an investigator that wants to work with industry, engaged with industry? Right off the bat, you're in this conversation with us. You've joined this webinar. Part of it's networking. So you've already done an important step, which is you're getting involved. You have a rich ecosystem here at the university with individuals in the BC and at Tech Transfer and FFMIB that's here to help and engage you as well as industry in building these relationships. Other opportunities that we see consistently across the board is around individuals that are attending professional conferences and meetings and providing, if they're doing presentations or poster sessions. Those are opportunities where companies are also at those meetings and they're looking and scouting for opportunities. They're looking to talk to the next great idea that's going to be an opportunity for them to bring it into their company. So there's always those opportunities. The networking as well too, where you have a group or whatever, or colleagues that are connecting you with other individuals within the industry space is something that can happen where, look, I'm busy, but I work closely with my collaborator here. You should talk to him, right? There can be where you have high impact papers that have gone out and companies are engaging you through inquiry based on the contact information and they want to know more about that. They want to know more about you. Also, in terms of professional gatherings and networking opportunities, those are all opportunities in which the interface between you, the academic researcher, and industry contact can be made. Now, this is all very good. This is things that can happen, but one thing that I want to say that you can prepare for when you get ready to have these opportunities is do a little due diligence up front about how you communicate what you want to do with that industry partner. Communicate your science. What's the value proposition? So we call this the elevator pitch. We actually put in and do a separate seminar around how you communicate your science. The elevator pitch, I think people are familiar with, but if you're not, I'll just quickly walk through the scenario. You hop in the elevator with the CEO of the company. You've got from floor 2 to floor 4 to basically pitch your idea to them. The idea being that when those doors open up, the CEO walks out, they're going, you know, talk to Tom to get on my calendar. We got to talk more about this opportunity. That's kind of what the elevator pitch is like, or the value proposition. How you communicate that and what makes a good pitch, it's where that the stakeholder that you're talking to, they say it back. They understand right away what you're saying makes good sense, right? And they want to go after it. They want to learn more. They feel that it's going to benefit them to hear your idea and perhaps act on that. The other thing, and this can't be understated, is you're selling this. It's you that they're going to want to invest in. It's not just the idea, it's how you deliver it as well too. And that takes a little bit of practice, but one that if you can get to that point can help lead and open the doors to multiple conversations down the road that are hopefully going to lead towards sponsored research opportunities. So real quickly, because like I said, we do a whole talk on this of building a pitch. Really, the main components that you want to keep in mind are things that cover the problem, the solution, who cares, and why they care. The whole goal is for that listener to say, tell me more. Let's set up time to meet again. I want to know more. That's it. So 30 seconds to a minute is all you get. And if you can communicate that well on a consistent basis, anytime you run into them in a professional conference, through a networking opportunity, or a connection on a cold call from a paper you wrote, this could be a really nice opportunity in terms of what your direct ask is. Real quickly, these are non-confidential discussions. There's always questions around when to put in confidentiality. We'll get into that a little bit more, but typically don't sell the secret sauce right off the bat during a pitch. Really, it's about talking high level at this point in time. Again, staying with those 4 talking points that I just outlined above. And perhaps in the future follow-up conversations, that is when a confidentiality agreement, either non-disclosure NDA or CDA, they mean the same thing, can be put in place. Okay, so art of making a deal. I know that it may mean a lot of things to people. It's got a lot of press, right? But I think it describes kind of nicely the activity that goes on with working with industry. I give here a checklist, and basically I would say bare bones, this is how most deals get done. It could be at various time levels and things, but typically this is kind of the iterative process, if you will. So qualification, it's identifying who they are and if they can do it, right? If they've got a reputation of being able to do this type of work. Needs analysis is, you know, we're missing out on this person in particular of expertise. We want to be able to do it. What value do they bring in terms of their research idea, their solution to the problem? Decision makers, which are really the folks that are going to say, I love this idea. Now send me a protocol and a budget. That's the proposal and the price quote. From there, we negotiate and we review terms. We make sure that IP looks good and everything, you know, if there's publication rights, things like that, we cover those things and the deal gets signed and we can move forward from there. Now, iteratively, this is typical in terms of how we see it, but it can go faster and slower in some spots too as well. But typically those are some of the checkpoints you'll see in any milestone deal. What we look for philosophically and what I want to encourage our research faculty to be thinking about is the right fit. The science has to align. The financials have to make sense. Your costs have to be covered. If you're going into the red to do this work, this might not be the right fit. I think the picture with the jigsaw highlights this very nicely. There's multiple considerations that need to go into this. Timing is important in terms of what the company has time for and what you have time to do as well. There may be contractual things like an embargo on your publication. That may not be the right timing for you. Would make sense if you are trying to get tenure, let's say, or something like that. That's absolutely imperative to you. We can't agree on that. The deal can't go through. So the right fit has to line up too as well. It's not just good science or just finances. It's a multitude of variables. Collaborations, you know, we can have standard ones, typically like our clinical trials where it's a sponsored protocol and we can run it through, to the really creative where there's maybe multiple sponsors that are interested in the same idea and we put together a pre-competitive consortium that shares essentially some of the the intellectual property that could be developed, or a shared in terms of the number of dollars that go in, and then decision making around what experiments get done. Those are all things that we can try and work through to find the best fit, the win-win opportunity for both sides. We want to look at impact too as well. Is this something that's going to be impactful to our mission as well as to our research teams? Those are all things that we want to think about. And then I can't overstate this enough around the common goals of operational and philosophical alignment. If you have a company that's willing to give you a lot of money, but they're a bear to work with, trust me, we've done those deals. It's very challenging. If it's a hostile work environment where they're always at odds, even though they've got a deal done, it's going to make for a pretty miserable experience. One that either it won't get done well, or if it does, you're going to never want to see them ever again. So as much as we can be philosophically aligned, it cannot be underestimated enough. And during the process of the deal making, that's where we're going to find out many of those types of things. Now let's flip from the academic side and what we're looking for and what we impart on our academic faculty to the industry side. So in their view, it's what's in it for me? What's the business case for me to sponsor and invest in your research? Does this give me a competitive advantage to be doing this? In terms of my forecast, if I can see that this is going to give me a market that's bigger than what I thought before, absolutely could make sense, but I need to be convinced to that. If they don't have the in-house expertise and they have to outsource it, that may be the opportunity and the consideration that's why they're coming and talking to you. They can't do it. They need someone like you to do it. Or they need you, the individual, or a model that you have as well, okay? Notice that I really didn't talk about and cover science, right? The question isn't necessarily, is it good science anymore? This is a business decision. Leading up to this, all the way to the decision makers, you would be working with scientists in the company, but the actual allocation of funds typically is going to be driven by the business side of the house. These are the things that they're thinking about when making a decision about whether or not they want to work in terms of sponsored research with academic scientists. Busy slide. I'm just going to kind of high level cover some of the things here in terms of the deal types that we can see. And there's a lot of complexity here. I'm going high level only. And one that hopefully through this conversation leads to future conversations, and we can talk to you as well as the companies that you're working with to make sure that the deal types we make is the best fit for that opportunity, okay? So things like sponsored research is really contract work that the industry partner or the company is asking you to do. It's contractual obligation and some payment. There are deliverables on both sides. It's typically on the non-human research side of things in the basic science lab space. Clinical trials involves human subjects. Majority of the research that we're talking about here is going to be protocols owned by the industry partners. However, and this can be true with sponsored research as well, these can be investigator initiated. In other words, these are protocols built by the intellectual power of our academic scientists and proposed to that industry partner. And then they either provide either funding or perhaps materials or resources to help do the research. We have research collaborations to licensing, where really we're focusing in on an agreement to develop and commercialize an agreed upon target, if you will. It's IP generating though, and it's one that hopefully there's got an exit point, the impact piece that we talked about, where companies can take it and move around or move out with it from the university. Others that we can cover is consulting, which I'm going to get into some details in just a second, but consulting really focuses on you as a key opinion leader. And back a few slides ago, I talked about companies are looking for key opinion leaders, experts in the field to help guide them and run with their strategy forward. So this is an opportunity for taking University of Michigan investigators, individuals, building out contract agreements in terms of work, terms of compensation, and that could be an opportunity that Michigan ORSP or Tech Transfer could help us with in that. Other sponsored research, OSA, I can get in real deep. I'm going to just keep it high level for the moment and just say other sponsored research really can be things like validation studies and ground truth projects in which maybe there's already a technology out there. A company has the algorithm. They know what it is. They just need to validate it, or they want ground truth data to make sure that their prediction modeling detects fever, let's say in 2 days in advance or something like that. So we're feeding data to them, right? That could be another sponsored activity. There's also service contract work where if there is a excess capacity in your lab and you're one of the only sites in the country that can do this work, companies go to you and say, look, we want you to do this, this, and this experiment, and please give us back the results. There's no academic research value necessarily going on here. It's you being a contracted service organization to do the work that they're asking of you. Well, then that is slightly different. There's certain changes we can do with the budgeting and things like that, where we can assess not necessarily for the cost of a lab technician, let's say, but rather what the market would bear, which could be slightly different than what the cost is of a lab technician. Again, we can get into details and specifics on things like that as we talk individual to individual and project. Okay, I want to take a second on consulting. I hear this quite a bit. Even this week, I heard from 2 faculty members about this, and I just want to underline this, that this provides a great benefit to individual investigators in working with industry and building out and promoting future opportunities with industry as well too, sponsored research, things like that. So Michigan allows consulting, and there are benefits. It's a career builder. It provides a national reputation if you're working with companies beyond the 4 walls of Michigan. I believe that it does lead to future research opportunities because the company knows you, you're a known entity. One of the best predictors I can see when anytime we work with industry and building out a sponsored research deal is whether or not there's history between that investigator and that company. Many times that's one of the strongest predictors of whether or not a deal gets done. There is some comfort knowing that this person we've worked with in the past has been able to do it versus the unknown. So don't underestimate that. That's really important. The other thing too is that you may get line of sight early on confidentially of some of the work that's going to be coming through for that company in the pipeline. So you get first chance at being in that trial or perhaps working with that material. So very important. I think that these are things that can be done. It's not always going to be the best thing and shouldn't be done, but I would encourage everyone to know the process and understand it. I provided a slide here. It's very busy, but let me just say, it is an allowed activity, and these on the left side, allowed in green, are some of the things that are allowable. We run it through our U of M Regulatory Affairs group. June Insco is a point of contact that if you reach out to me asking about consulting, I'm happy to connect you with June. She's very well versed in this. We have our regulatory dean as well, Jackie Drusi, who's new to the position, taking over for Ray Hutchinson. But to be honest with you, this is part of the industry-sponsored opportunity. I think that it's something that sometimes is understated. So I really want to pull this out. The ability to be on scientific advisory boards is allowed. Now, if there's a concern around conflicts of interest, that's where regulatory affairs can provide guidance and management. That's what I try and explain is that a lot of times conflict it's all over the place. If you really want to go deep, you work at the University of Michigan. It's imperative that you get research done, otherwise you don't get a paycheck. You're conflicted, right? We know that on a certain level. At any point you can say that, but in this situation, what I think is very important that we want to cover is that there is opportunities in which you can be a consultant for a company. You can leverage your expertise as a key opinion leader and benefit both yourself as well as your research going forward, so that it's something that you can do and it's not prohibitive. Now, there may be management plans and things like that, and that's what regulatory affairs will help you with. So I just wanted to put that out there. This is a great little kind of cheat sheet document. We do have a policy that helps explain some of the details, but like I said, reaching out and doing that due diligence, understanding that, I think is very important. Okay, so other considerations I just want to make sure that we cover on is confidentiality. That's a question we get asked a lot. When do we do it? When's it right to do it? So first off, if you're unsure, wait, don't share all the information. Ask for guidance. Contact me, contact the business development team. There's no shame in asking and saying, hold on a second, we don't need to, I'm not sure if I'm supposed to share this yet. Typically, confidential information for investigators is unpublished data. So if you've got unpublished results, you might want to consider, if it's not in the public domain, to be putting in a confidentiality agreement. Our teams are all here ready to help you go through that process and give guidance on that. The other thing is time frame. So things move quickly in industry. They're competitive too as well. They may be considering multiple labs, and sometimes time is the biggest factor for them. It's when can we get started? So expect yesterday deadlines, right? And part of it is then getting to the right parts of our organization or coming quickly to a decision of, is this a good fit for me? Do I have the bandwidth? Does the finances make sense, right? Is it a good fit overall philosophically? Those are all things that as soon as we can keep moving through that process, we can do that. So the goal here really is we want to focus on diversifying portfolio, the research funds that are coming into the university. Industry is one of those areas that we can capitalize on. I think the trends suggest that we can do more perhaps, and that it's in the past from what we're seeing, there is an increase in that. I think it's a culture change that I think many people are embracing and are willing to participate on. I want to put some caveats out there that it's not always every time you talk to a company that you're going to get sponsored research opportunities. In fact, they might walk away near the end, and it could be for many different reasons. If these are publicly traded organizations, they have stock, they have stockholders that they have to, appease, if you will. And perhaps if it's been a bad market, for them for that year, that quarter and reports, they may change how they're doing R&D spending. And it has absolutely nothing at all to do with your research. So one of the things we talk about is shots on goal. That's the thing that I bring up, where you got to sometimes have several in queue with those opportunities explored, and one or two can hit, and that should be plenty in many ways. But you got to be in the arena playing the game to get there too as well. So these are some of the strategies that we think about. Let's talk about equivalent value, industry to academia. So this slide kind of highlights what's valuable to industry and what it would be to academics. So really, scientific and clinical know-how is valuable to industry. That equivalent value can be sponsored research. We can put together master agreements, consortia, co-development opportunities. These are valuable things that we can talk to in academia. Value to industry is intellectual property, IP enabling research. And for us, it's being able to license the technology out to those companies, putting together research collaborations with the potential to license first right of refusal type things. Those are academic valuable interactions. Patient and disease expertise, data and biospecimens, which I can tell you is a big space that we're in right now. The equivalent is human trials. It's human subject research. It's being able to share materials that we've banked in our freezers or data consortia that we've put together with, a disease type, let's say, and being able to use those and share those. It's talent. So industry is always looking for the key opinion leaders or new talent that's graduating from the institution. That relates in academics to consulting agreements, or that's hiring fellows or postdocs and graduates, and even some of our faculty into their companies to boost their experience or boost their talent. Again, I go back to visuals again. So another way to frame this, right? And I'm thinking about it, as I said before, back in the beginning, ideas to impact, academics and research. The value proposition, right? Why is it good for industry? Why are they interested in this situation? That's what we want to be thinking about when we're talking to industry. And where does this all sit? So research activities is an academic one. Research has overlap with industry, but products really is where they're going towards, right? And so on the far left, research, academics, industry, far right, and products with the overlap of those two. We can see that successful exit along the way, research and on the academic side being consulting and these research collaborations with potential licensing opportunities, with licensing opportunities in the products to the industry partners, as well as company startup formations, which for a company they may invest in, be excited about, and then even perhaps acquire if they feel that it's going to boost their portfolio in-house. So those are some of the things, like I said, from a visual perspective, why it's important, what the industry partners are thinking about, and where we as academic researchers sit, and some of the drivers in which they're going after this, these relationships and making deals. So I went through a lot, but I just want to summarize really quickly some of the things I think that are important to take away from today's talk. One is Michigan is rich with resources. If people know me well, they know I say there's at least two of everything, right? We got two email accounts and stuff like that. But the reality is we have a good, rich resource when it comes to working with U of M investigators and connecting them with industry collaborators. Groups like ours within FFMI, the BEC and tech transfer are some of those groups. So reaching out and utilizing the internal resources that are available to you is something that I highly recommend that you do. Also, you want to be prepared. This is something that is very important too as well. You have an opportunity and you don't always get to plan when it's going to happen, where you're going to walk into that elevator and have the decision maker right there in which you can pitch your idea and communicate with that partner and potentially get them to have that next conversation with you. And that takes a little bit of practice, but once you're ready to go, it can actually provide you with great opportunities and opens lots of doors. And then the other thing is that Michigan as a team and across tech transfer, ORSP, our Office of General Counsel, teams like BC and business development, we're experienced in both doing standard research agreements that can help quickly and efficiently fast track projects, but then also create unique models like pre-consortia opportunities with multiple sponsors where it can be win-win, or around a preferred partner like Novartis in drug discovery to give to internal, through our providing internal RFPs to our U of M investigators. Those are all things that we're doing, have experience with, and we continue as the situation arises and it makes good sense and best fit, we can do that. Some contact information just on the slides, because I know this is something that if people want to take a look at, you can see. And I can certainly give more if you reach out to any one of our team members to get any details on that. And with that, I'll open it up to any questions.
Excellent. Thank you, Mike. Yeah, we do have several minutes here. Please feel free to either submit a question via the chat feature or if you'd like to ask Mike directly, unmute your microphone and go for it. I will remind folks, because there were several that joined a little late, that we will be sharing a PDF version of the slides as well as the recording post-program. So you'll get all this information as soon as possible. But what questions do you have?
Hi, Mike. Can you hear me? Hi, it's Heather Ascani. I don't know. Here, I'll turn on my camera. Is it okay?
Sure.
Oh, no, I can't. You can't see me. Sorry. It's been disabled, but I had some questions. Maybe for the group, it would be helpful to explain the roles of some of the other groups at the university that have a role in business development with industries such as doctor and compliance and other groups. Maybe you could comment, because I know some comments that you made in the past were very helpful.
Okay. And hopefully I cover them, and if not, let me know.
Okay.
So I'll start by saying Michigan's got a rich resource available to many investigators. The doctor office that Heather has mentioned is our data office that resides within the med school's Office of Research. It's a group that has access to multiple data repositories. So we've got our EPIC, which is our medical record MyChart system. It's got access to the intraoperative database as well too, centricity, payer data, mortality data. What that is able to do is really provide, if you will, an opportunity to pull in all those data points to do and drive research opportunities. So it could be everything from retrospective analysis to identifying, what, disease types we have and doing some research in that space. Or for instance, it could be used as a tool for feasibility of a population that you're about to try and do some clinical research testing on, let's say. We can also get into, and this has been an ask more recently in the last few years, around access to data for companies that we would share at either role level or at aggregated level data, and perhaps apply material that we've collected through biobanking activities with clinically annotated disease and even with outcomes or treatment and outcomes as a way to enrich the relationship between an industry partner and a faculty member in boosting their research. And it could be, I would say, with that one, there's some specific policies that are put in place in due diligence, but it's one that we see quite a bit of. And it doesn't require then the investigator then to have to do all that pulling out of the information. Let's say there's resources that would be available. Companies look at that as a value add too as well, where they don't have to pay for the efforts for 6 months of someone to pull that medical record information, let's say. So we have multiple resources that are complementary to getting a deal done with industry. I didn't decide to go through the entire med school Office of Research service line in this situation, but certainly they're out there. The CTSU, or excuse me, the CTSO is one of the ones that I wanted to highlight just because of the clinical trials and the high volume of sponsored research dollars coming in the clinical trial space. I could give you more details, specific questions, happy to do that. Part of our role is really to help connect those interdisciplinary services that the school provides, as well as just outside of the school, like we described with MD2 or with Coulter program, if it's biomedical engineering and a med device potentially that you're looking to build a prototype, let's say, out of and get it out of the university. So a myriad.
So Mike, I hope I'm not stepping on someone else's question, but I can be a little more specific. We've had several requests around EMR data from industry partners. Do you have any advice moving towards sharing that type of data with industry partners to offer the group, or definitely our group?
Okay, yeah, and we've talked a lot about that, but so just real quick, I didn't mention it, but the University of Michigan and the med school has put in place a policy around the sharing of human subject data and human subject material. So any tissue or blood or anything like that that's going outside the university to a for-profit entity. So if it's another academic partner, this policy does not apply necessarily. However, to a for-profit entity, this policy is enacted. It's one that the data office is, one of their services is to be the group that's going to enforce and follow through on this policy. This is all the way approved and supported by Dr. Runge when it comes to the exchange of any human subject material or data. What I would recommend to you is that if you're having conversations with companies that's going to involve data and human subjects, that you can reach out to our group or to the data office to ask for some questions and clarifications. A couple of things I can tell you real quickly of what's in scope and what's out of scope in the human subject or in the human and data biospecimen policy. If it's retrospectively collected data that has a not clear endpoint, like it's just for future research, that would fall into the policy. A clinical trial in which you're collecting data and you know the intervention, you've prospectively consented the patient that you're going to put them on drug, it's going to go to Merck, that's okay, it falls outside the policy. So it's very important that we're very clear about that, is that if it's a consented patient that didn't tell the patient where it's going, that it's going to be commercialized, those are some of the talking points that you're going to run into, and there are going to be some expectations that that patient be re-engaged, re-consented, hitting those target points, where it's going and all that good stuff. In addition to that, the committee is going to look at things like fair market value, looking at what it would mean if we're on the open market for a second, it's a rare population with a rare biospecimen and the data that's attached to it, and it could potentially be, you know, through our assessments at another biobank, they're selling it for $300 per sample, let's say. We would be positioning it in such a way that we would say, in addition to being cost neutral, the cost it takes to take it out of the freezer and send it off to the company, we'd also be negotiating a market price on top of that too as well. So it'd be $300 per sample plus whatever the costs are for the team to pull and send it out. One of the things philosophically is that we want to do consistent due diligence when it comes to the sharing of materials and biospecimens and data with anybody outside the institution. That process is through committee review. They meet every other week. I would tell you that if you work with myself or with Drew Bennett and Tech Transfer, those are kind of the two folks that do a lot of this as well too, especially on the market side. And we see a lot of faculty and researchers in this space. We're looking to help you get to yes and goes. So the sooner you can reach out to us if you think that you're running into this type of opportunity, the better, so that we can position ourselves we talk to the companies normally when it comes to market assessments and things like that. It's not an expectation that you, the investigator, go in there and say, look, you know, we're going to make you pay for it because we think it's 300. Not asked of you. You know, this is a relationship. We want you guys to be preserved in that space, and that's where the activity in that space can fall to, you know, tech transfer or FFMIB team. But reach out sooner than later. If you're working on it and you're not sure, it doesn't hurt to ask myself, and I can send the link to the data and biospecimen contact email.
Thanks, Mike. Very helpful.
Oh, it looks like we have one final question, Mike, in the chat feature. It says, does your process timeline for an idea to impact lead to FDA approval and commercialization with other kinds of research data rather than just clinical trial data? For example, are there observational prospective cohort data for tools that have some value for proof of concept?
So you're probably talking about slides like I had back here. Excuse me. I mean, the short of it is it can cover all of those things. It doesn't have to be just clinical trial or clinical sponsored research opportunities. Impact, I would say in terms of the due diligence process and everything, the impact is what I'm trying to position is getting you in the mindset of how a company is going to sponsor your research. That's what I would say in this scenario. But honestly, I mean, in terms of the entire continuum, as I shared here, this is what we're keeping in mind. Ultimately, we're looking at the big picture here. We do want to hit the impact into the patient care space. That's where they're going to hit ultimately. But I go back to, even for companies, these are shots on goals for them too. Not every drug or every device that they're working on is going to make it all the way to market. It's not going to make it all the way through the FDA. So they do have to have multiple assets in the portfolio for them to be able to continue to go forward with. And if you have something indirectly in mind, let's have a conversation after this and I can explain further. Because I'm not sure if I'm answering exactly what you're asking, so happy to do that. But that's what I would say is that overall the impact piece is ultimately in their mind, industry is to get to the market, making money in this space, beating out competitors. They want to invest in that.
Excellent. Well, all right. It is 3 o'clock on the dot. So let's go ahead and wrap up. I want to thank everybody on the call today for joining us. I especially want to thank you, Mike, for your expertise. It was absolutely excellent. As a reminder, slides and recording will be sent post-program, as will an evaluation. So please, if you have a few minutes, complete that evaluation so we can always learn how to improve our programming. And of course, additional educational programs, as I mentioned and Mike mentioned, will continue to be offered by FFMI. There's a fast-paced course, which is a program of note that starts here in a few weeks. So if you have an interest in learning more, please venture to our website or reach out to me directly, and we're happy to get you involved. So with that, take care, everyone. Have a great day.